Good afternoon, my name is Tanasha Peterson-Quintana, and on 19 October, which was on Friday, the Intro to Archives and Manuscripts class had a workshop at the Wilson Library at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. During this time, we were allowed to get hands-in into various archival processes that the Wilson Library encompasses. We were allowed to meet various people such as Monica Ferguero, which was a cataloging librarian at the music library there. We met Tim Shearer, and he was the associate university librarian for digital strategies and IT. Along with those two, we were able to meet Doug Deisenhouse, which he was the director of strategic initiatives and special projects there. We also were able to be presented what the photographic archival process was by the visual materials archivist, Patrick Colum, and we also got the pleasure from hearing from Miss Ann Wells, and she is the audio visual archivist. And this Friday was a very inclusive day. We got to get our hands dirty with not only dealing with the collection entry forms, but also learning about photographs, audio, video and film, and we also were engaged in a very interesting conversation during lunch with Miss Figueroa, Mr. Shear, and Mr. Deisenhouse about the relationship between the UNC, Chapel Hill, and North Carolina Central University students. So, as I said, the first thing that we did that day was complete a collection entry form. The collection entry form was based on a collection titled the Carolina Seminars Record, and this organization is an organization because it's still in existence, meaning that the collection is not complete, was basically a think tank that encompassed several university leaders and scholars and people of academia discussing various topics, whether it be about different places, such as different places in across the world, such as various countries in Africa, whether it be about different diseases that were prominent or that are prominent, or about different demographics. And I thought it was interesting because you get a glimpse of what was being talked about in the world of academia and how in depth the participants were invested in these seminars. And being that the organization is still here, you get to see, how the seminars progressed and what press releases and how the outside world is viewing this organization that was having these discussions. The collection was over 3,000 records, so it was an extensive collection, about 6 boxes. I think that it was not as difficult to collect in an abstract, being that we understood the purpose of the organization and we understood what they were talking about and who might have been there. So the research value, it would be moderate, but I feel that processing this collection entry form was more manageable, partly because we have such great support like Mrs. Dean and the other staff that were helping us there. So after that, we talked to our Mr. Patrick Colum, and he is the photographic archivist there, or the visual archivist, and he explained to us the process of dealing with photographs and the different types of photograph mediums that are in existence. And I didn't know much about photographs or the evolution of photographs or capturing history in a still image. And that's what he talked about. He also talked about the Durham Herald newspaper collection and how this collection is from a newspaper company that existed before 1945, but because there was some type of fire disaster, there's no materials or no, I guess, evidence of photography or any documents that exist before 1945. So the collection that he worked on from the Durham Herald newspaper is from 1945 to 2002. And he talked about the description of the photographs that he was finding. He talked about how he involved himself in the preservation and conservation of photos, and he also talked about the arrangement. And this was all very new for me, and I appreciated that because it's another asset that we get to earn from working in the archives and actually getting our hands dirty and actually seeing the different mediums that he works with. Along with this, after lunch, we got to hear from Rebecca Stubbs and her experience there and how she worked with the Greg's family, I want to say. The Grag family, I want to say, and their collection of photos, and how she got to see generation after generation grow and mature, and how they live their lives all through photographs, and how this prompted her thesis project. And I applaud that so much because that's an aspect of history that I feel is most precious, and being able to know somebody just by the photos of them and their family and seeing their daily activities is amazing, because it's not necessarily the standard books that you would read about them. You actually get to see them in their element. So after Patrick Cullum talked to us about the collection that he arranged and how he arranges them in the different mediums that he works with, we went to lunch, and that is when we got to meet Miss Monica Figueroa, who was, like I said, the catalog librarian for the music library, as well as Tim Shear, the Associate University Librarian, librarian for Digital Strategy and IT, as well as Doug Eisenhouse, who is the director of the Strategic Initiatives and Special Projects. Mrs. Dean started out the conversation at lunch with letting us know that she wants to help us find jobs about, resume building, resume critiquing, and just helping us move forward in our future. And then this prompted another direction of conversation, which led into the relationship between UNC and North Carolina Central University, and how these leaders that were sitting with us understood the strains and the challenges between the two institutions, and how they do hope and they are going and have been making steps to remedy those things and change the dynamics between the two universities, and making it so that it's more inclusive, and that they recognize that there needs to be biases broken down from the roots of those predetermined biases of people, because that's what it all boils down to, is the people that are making decisions about who can work here and who has access to what resources versus somebody else. This conversation was very valuable because we were able to see that people at UNC actually do recognize, the challenges of the relationship, and how it hasn't always been at its best, but there are inclusiveness committees that actually Mrs. Ferrero is chairperson of, and she does regularly hold different events that work on anti-racist and anti-white supremacy practices, and that talk about biases in the workplace that also affect the description process in library sciences and in public archival settings. After lunch, we talked to Miss Ann Wells, and she is the visual archivist. Sorry if I messed that part up, but her job entails arranging and processing unique non-commercial materials that fall in the category of film, video, and audio. And what was interesting is that she actually doesn't even listen to all of them, and that was what I assumed, that she would be listening to all of what she got just so she could know what's on there. But actually, a lot of what the description comes from is what's on the exterior of whatever container or device that she gets it donated to the library. And it was so neat to see the different devices that have evolved in use of audio and visual materials for the archives. And it was like sometimes looking at things that you would think come from the prehistoric age or something, and just seeing the evolution of technology. And that's really what it was, technology growing from its most primitive stage to close to now. The different materials that she showed us sometimes have to be repackaged, and the description and the formats that she has to work with sometimes have to be sent off, depending on if they have the machines to, transfer whatever on that particular device. So in conclusion, when we were able to see the different photograph mediums, the different audio and visual materials that they use and that they contain at the Wilson Library, it was such a powerful experience because we were able to feel and touch things that people have preserved their history on or in, per se. So I think that Friday during the workshop was one of the most learning experiences that I've had within the last 3 weeks, and I really appreciate that. And I was so excited to meet everybody that I did, not only on 19 October, but every Friday before them, because they all had something special to share, and they all had great experiences and great advice to give to us students that are wanting to learn as much as we can, and we want to take hold of that and continue to absorb as much as we are allowed to in this particular aspect of history and in the archives. So in conclusion, that was the archival workshop, and thank you.